Hi, I'm attorney James Betzold, and if you're a new lawyer recently out of law school, or maybe you just passed the bar, where you are now, I once was. I was starting my own law firm right out of law school, and I've got some tips that can help you move things along. I hope you find it helpful. In the early 1900s, I forget which major oil company it was. I don't know if it was Rockefeller, Standard Oil, whatever it was. They needed to make billions of barrels because oil was booming. And the way to transport that oil was literally by the barrel at the time. Well, I want to say it was Rockefeller. It could have been someone else. Somebody can correct me or throw something in a comment or something about this. But what happened is one of the owners went around to his businesses, the various parts of his oil business, and was just thinking critically about how to improve things, how to save money, how to make more money. And when he got to the barrel manufacturing area, he noticed that they needed, I don't know, let's say like 29 soldering points or welding points for constructing the actual barrel. I don't remember the exact number. And he said, you know what? I'll bet we could do this with less welding points or weld points or solder points or something. Just welding metal together, right? And his engineers were like, well, we've always built it this way. It's very sturdy. It works well. He says, yeah, but I think we could do it with less. And because we're making so many barrels, this could save us some money. So look into it. And sure enough, he had his engineers look into it. And they were able to eliminate a number of the solder points without compromising the physical structure. And by doing that, just those small, tiny welding spots for welding the metal together, that costs money. You got to have the supplies for welding, and you got to pay for the welding rods. And by saving those number of weld points on each barrel, the man ended up saving his company millions of dollars even back then. And that's because they made so many of them, right? So this message today, this episode today, is about efficiencies and innovation. Now, admittedly, this word innovation, it's a buzzword, right? There's no getting around it. Everyone wants to say, oh, I'm an innovative law firm. Oh, I'm an innovative company. Oh, we're innovative. We're disrupting the whole industry. Nonsense. Innovation means nothing more than finding a way to do something better and cheaper. And if not better, at least the same, but cheaper. That's innovation. Essentially, you're doing more with less, and therefore retaining money or making more money, right? You're coming up with efficiencies. So when you hear that word innovation, I just want you to translate it in your head to making do with less. Now, people are always going to have their opinions, their ideas, and their guidance. I'm giving you some of it here for free right now, but you may also feel free to ignore it if you find a quicker, cheaper, more efficient way to do it. What we're going to talk about sort of is how the legal market is today. That may change in a month or two or three or a year. So you always want to have that ability to be flexible as well. So just because you're doing something one way today doesn't mean you're stuck doing that for the rest of your career. Innovation, or making do with less, or finding efficiencies, is something that should be a regular practice in your firm. You should be regularly asking yourself these questions. And if you say, you know what, we're doing things this way, it seems like there might be a couple extra steps. Is there any way we can simplify it? You maybe will find steps that are no longer necessary for some reason. And that's going to help you a lot. In the legal space, the law firms that are able to grow and thrive while providing excellent customer service and great results, of course, to their clients, those are the ones that are constantly doing this. I mean, if you walk into an office and they're like, here, please fill out this form, and you're literally filling that paper form out by hand, I can guarantee you there's multiple steps that you could be saving with a little bit of technology or changing your policies or procedures. And the other thing you want to think about while you're doing this, while you're innovating, is the client experience. Because you may have the most efficient and clean solution, but if your client's not happy with it, if their experience in the process is not fulfilling for some reason, then you've got a big problem because you won't have customers. You may have the most efficient, manufacturing line for processing casework, but you won't have enough customers then. So you got to make sure to balance that and always keep what's the customer experiencing in mind. So if you're looking at your workload and you see that things are going well, but you want to further optimize with processes, technology, or other procedures, here are some ideas of some areas you can look at for innovating. First of all, staff. Salaries and staff will probably be your highest expense, next to your own salary. Hopefully that's how it works out. If you can manage your staffing situation well, you can thrive. This doesn't mean that you necessarily limit the number of staff you have, although at an early stage in your firm, that's reasonable. But you don't want to focus all your time on paying your staff at the expense of paying yourself. You're going to have to hustle. You may need to act like the receptionist for a few months until you find someone or find something that's going to work. So you can at least pay yourself in the meantime too. In this series, we sort of talk about what do we do with our student debt. Well, you got to make sure that you'll be able to pay that off. And so in the meantime, maybe it's not the most ideal situation, but just think about Jimmy McGill. That was the name of the character on Better Call Saul. He's answering his cell phone. Oh, Law Office of James McGill. How may I direct your call? He's faking it till he's making it, right? And you might just have to do that a little bit until you get somebody to answer phones for you. That is a huge advantage, by the way. When I was at that phase, I would be answering the phones, and the first thing people would ask is, "Oh, are you the attorney?" And I don't want to lie to them, so I said yes. And they say, "Oh, I have a question." And they just launch into their question, and they screw me out of a consult. And I get no consult fee, and I get nothing. I don't even get them to come into my office and know or see me or whatever. So that can be challenging. And again, we talked about before establishing expectations with your client. It's hard to do when you're on the phone with them and they just have a quick question and don't value your time as much as they should. But you'll get through it, right? So hustle, hustle, hustle. There are a number of options when it comes to staff, right? I recommend having at least one staff member that you can hire who can work as your receptionist or be physically there in your office space, especially when you're starting out. That provides sort of a buffer between you and the client, which for some reasons you do want that, depending on your practice stuff. I know there's attorneys who are like, no, I don't want to hire anyone else. I want my clients to talk directly to me. Well, if you're like a regular small firm and you need to establish yourself, you're going to need to follow some best practices, and we can talk about that another time. But let's talk about staffing. First, if you've got friends or family who want to work for you, that's cool. Get them on payroll so that you don't damage the relationship. I know a lot of attorneys out there who run the firm with their wife or husband, and that seems to work. Typically, there's some efficiencies that can be gained that way, obviously. If you have someone you can hire who's not a family member, that's good too. It's easier, I think, to hold them accountable for doing good quality work. If you are working with family, you need to say, hey, look, we're going to be working together. Here's how I work. Here's what the expectations are. If you're not meeting those expectations, I know you're my brother or sister, but I will have to let you go because this is the most important thing here. And then you just got to have really high standards from the get-go. So staff is obviously something. There are a number of answering services, virtual reception services that will answer your incoming phone calls. So once you get to a point where you've got phone calls coming in, you can take a look at those. Now, without naming any names, if you calculate out how much time you're paying for them to answer your phones, you may find it's actually better to hire a high schooler or college student or someone who's graduated high school to just sit and answer your phones for you. It can be very expensive depending on the reception service you're using. So actually run the numbers. They may say, oh, but we're going to answer your phone calls for 100 minutes a month, and that only costs like $300 and blah, blah, blah. Well, hopefully you can gauge that you're going to need a lot of minutes. You're going to need a lot of people answering, and you want people who call your office to get something more than okay, I'll deliver the message, bye. That sort of a thing. That's like the image of your law firm. That's why I really highly favor having someone on staff who knows the ins and outs, or who you can train for that, and that they can give better information. It's a little warmer. They'll meet the person when they physically come into the office. And so that being said, there are reception services which may work in the interim. It may work as a long-term solution. And there's also virtual legal assistant or virtual paralegal services. One of them, Bella Legal Assistance, fills our immigration law practice niche that we serve. So they're one of our sponsors. They do great work. They are trained immigration paralegals who can help with case preparation. They speak English and Spanish. They'll even, if you allow them, they will contact your clients and help do the actual casework. So you don't have to be on the phone with your clients with your precious attorney time every day, because they're doing it. And they'll say, hey, the attorney's waiting on these documents. We need to get your signatures. We need to get this passport photo. Things like that. Now, those can be a big advantage as well, because if it's somebody who already knows your practice area, you save on training. And I can tell you from having trained a number of individuals, you're typically looking at months of training before your staff member is going to be really up to speed on all the things that happen in an office. And so it's helpful. It's helpful to have other staff to sort of supplement that, who can really focus on the casework. Even being remotely, because many things now are, of course, done remotely. So for staff, let's just quickly resume. You have options: hiring someone locally who's going to physically be in your office. You can use a virtual receptionist or paralegal service, virtual legal assistants. I say virtual, it's really remote. They're real people. They just work remotely and can do all the same work. And that can be a way to efficiently not only staff your office, but then to scale it. Because you're going to reach a point where all of a sudden you realize you need another staff member. And if you have an established relationship with an assistant service, and they say, hey, yeah, we can up your hours, or we can add another assistant, that's going to save you a lot of recruiting, hiring, training, making sure they show up that first day of work, and worrying about whether they show up for the next 2 months as well. And they can hit the ground running. So some things to consider. Processes and procedures. That's the next big topic. We've already talked a little bit about being organized and establishing processes and procedures for your law firm. This is one of the areas which you should constantly be improving, constantly be changing it, if you find there's a better way. And you need to constantly be reviewing it at the least. You may find that your mail intake system, due to some new technological change, is ripe for tweaking or upgrade or efficiency. Or maybe when things get filed away, maybe they should be scanned first. And maybe that needs to be part of a standard procedure that you can have in a handbook or some training materials. So you can have that standard that you know every piece of mail that comes in is going to get handled the right way. There's a guide to it. There's processes and procedures for it. Same thing with incoming emails. If you have an email account that's like office at Betzold Law or attorney at Betzold Law, for example, you want processes and procedures for your staff to handle those and record them as being handled and reviewed and getting information back to the client. There's other basic things, like I know a lot of times clients will call and say, oh, I want to talk to the attorney. Well, maybe the attorney's in a consult or working on some important casework at the meantime. You may find a better way of recording and transferring those messages or sending those messages to the attorney so that they can get back to the client as well. A lot of these little things are always ripe for tweaking. For example, let's talk about text messaging. This is one thing that is like an absolute must in a law firm these days. Because clients don't always have the time to answer their phone. They might be sleeping or working. Maybe they work second or third shift. and it may be inconvenient for them to call you during those times if they're asleep or unavailable. But a text message goes right to their phone, and everybody has text messaging nowadays. It shows up as a pop-up or a notification typically. So it's a high probability that your clients will see it right away or as soon as they open their phone again. Whereas they don't have to log into their voicemail. They don't have to log in to their email to check. It pops up and it's right there. And if they can respond to it, they'll do it. So it facilitates that sort of communication with your firm. So one of our sponsors is Prima Law. Prima.law. That's the website. It's legal case management. It's cloud-based. It includes an integration for text messaging. So the idea is right from your contact profile page, you can be sending messages to your client. They can be responding. You'll see the answers in real time. You can send them images of things. They can send you images of things. So if you say, you know what, I need a copy of your driver's license, they can click, take that photo, send it to you right away, and it's stored securely in your case management system. Saves tons of time. It'll save you tons of money. Super cheap. Text messages are very inexpensive to actually use these days. So we definitely recommend you do that. And since we're talking about innovation and finding ways to do things better and cheaper, that's definitely one. People can't always pick up the phone. And that is the best way to get a hold of them otherwise. So when clients come in, just make sure you're getting their cell phone number, and then you can tell them, look, if something comes up, I'm going to send you a text message. That's fine. Let's talk about other ways that maybe you can cut costs. So when I first started my law firm, I was right out of law school, had a bunch of student loan debt, didn't have a lot of clients starting out. It was sort of trickling in. So I needed to put a sign out front of my building where I had my office at the time. And I received quotes from a number of local businesses. And it was like hundreds of, like $250, $350, $550 for them to actually do it all for me. And this was wintertime here in Michigan. And the ground had frozen already, right? So if you know anything about digging in the dirt during wintertime, when it's frozen, it's tough. And I actually had to go through blacktop, put in a couple of 4x4s to build the sign that I was going to be using. So we had to put that in, cement, but I had to literally chisel through 2 layers of blacktop before I even got to the dirt. So I didn't have hundreds of dollars to pay for a sign. I needed money to pay rent and eat. So I did have $50. So I went to the hardware store. I bought a piece of weather treated plywood, some paint, some blue and white paint. And I was pretty creative with my printer at the time, and I figured out how to print a huge stencil of my logo and my name and my phone number. So I printed out that stencil. Literally, they're cutting it out of it wasn't cardboard even. It was like cardstock is what it was. So taped that together, got myself a stencil, started painting. And then I actually had a sister-in-law who was here helping me paint that as well. So for like $50 instead of hundreds of bucks, we had a brand new sign. And then I still have the sign. It's just being used as flooring in one of my sheds now. So for business cards, though, I recommend just don't print those. Buy those. Have them printed. They always look nicer. You can get like rounded corners on it. You can have it be special shapes or sizes nowadays. I recommend just keeping it rectangular in shape. Maybe smooth out the edges or something, but don't give somebody like a big circle that doesn't even fit in their wallet. It's just inconvenient. But I can tell you, I prefer overnightprints.com. Overnightprints.com. They are a good solution. They're cost effective. They're not expensive. High quality. They have a lot of environmentally friendly stuff they do, like I think they call it waterless printing. It's some process in the printers they have that eliminates waste. So that's good too. When it comes to advertising, getting reviews, or getting better visibility online, you need to think and study critically what people will tell you, typically what salespeople will tell you. Many times, when you're analyzing a service or product, a salesperson they'll try and point that out. Like, look, it's a cup of coffee a day. Look, it's going to save you 5 hours per case, which means it's going to save you thousands of dollars. It's going to make you take more cases and yada, yada, yada. A couple other topics. Making do with less. This can come in handy when it comes to legal research, a legal library. There are many times where legal research is actually included as a member benefit with your state bar organization. In fact, I believe that between Casemaker and Fastcase, every state bar in the United States offers some form of free legal research. When compared to some of the legacy providers, this can actually be a huge benefit, because legacy providers like LexisNexis or Westlaw can be hundreds of dollars per month. And they're going to say, oh, everybody has to. No. Get to know your practice area, find good resources for your state, materials. Fastcase and Casemaker, these are good options out there. So definitely keep those under your belt. So when we talk about doing more with less, you're always going to hear this word innovation. Find creative ways to solve the many challenges you're going to face as you're opening your law firm. I'm attorney James Betzel. Hope this has been helpful. Tune in for more.